Hi there YouTube, this is Amy at Hoppachick Creative and I'm starting a new project. It's going to be a flower garden with some flourishes, and as you can see I have some of my materials out to show you. So first I'll just show you a couple of the homemade mists. This one is a cranberry mist and I made this using Tim Holtz's Adirondack alcohol ink. I put about a quarter of the bottle of alcohol ink into this 2-ounce spritzer and filled the rest with filtered water, and that comes out a really nice vibrant sort of a fuchsia color. And then this looks very dark. It's a purplish brown color, and what I'm hoping to create with these two colors is a sort of orchid color. And as you can see, I have my little canvas set up. So taking a note from Jenny Belly's tutorials, if you ever watch her, she does a lot of upcycled, repurposed materials, and that's what I'm using today. This is part of a cereal box that I just cut out the back end of, and a little later I'm going to show you how to make your own shadow box using a cereal box. And then I just have this sheet of watercolor paper, and I'll show you the pad that this came from. This is Bienfeng. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a 9x12 watercolor paper, and I got this through Jerry's Artarama. So I'm going to be using a sheet of that to create some three-dimensional flowers that are going to go on the canvas. And to prep the canvas, I'm going to get my gesso ready and be right back. Okay, so we just had a little bit of excitement here. My roommate told me that she just saw a snake outside, and I'm not going to be going outside with the dogs anytime soon. Okay, so by now you might be used to seeing this big jar that I have. I just store my gesso in here. And it's just your basic white gesso. I have not tried clear gesso yet, but I think that that would be fun to work with. And I'm just going to grab a paintbrush and start spreading the gesso. One thing I like to do before I start using a paintbrush is just to kind of pull at it a little bit and make sure any little furries are off of it so it doesn't get stuck on your canvas. Just a little quick tip. So I'm going to spread this out and make some texture as I go, and it's going to be sort of willy-nilly, like just texture in every direction. I think that would go well with like a wild flower garden look. And I'm going to dedicate this video to my friend Kat. She is an avid gardener. She loves butterflies too, so I might try to add a butterfly somehow. I have some Maya Road filigree butterflies that I could add to this canvas that would give it a great additional mixed media effect. Okay, so as you can see, we have a nice amount of gesso on the canvas. This should be enough to cover to the edges. And it's a feel-good thing to use this cardboard that otherwise would have gone into the recycling bin. It's nice to just upcycle it into a piece of art. Okay, just continuing to move the gesso around. And I want to get lots of that. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. Okay. try this out. I'm just going to hold this down and shake up my sprays a little bit, and I'm just expecting that my hands are going to get pretty inky. Okay, so that's the first pass of the purple brown, and I'm just going to try and dry around it as much as I can so it dries before it seeps underneath the mask. And another trick you can do is use your baby wipes. These are always great to have on hand for your projects. They work in lots of different ways: adding color, removing color, moistening a page. I saw someone using them with the Faber-Castell gelatos, which I hadn't thought of doing that before. You just lay down a thick coat of the gelato and then go over it with a baby wipe, and it just naturally moistens it for you and makes it perfect to work on. Okay, so most of the mask there retained its shape, and I'm just going to quickly clean this one off. And then I want to get this guy right in here. This is like a long stalk, so hopefully I can hold it in place well enough that it's not going to get all over the place here. I'm going to get into that little section under my hand and blot some of the super inky areas. We'll see how that one came out. Okay. And do this one. This is a flourish. Whoever said you had to be perfect? Not me. Okay. That one actually came out really clear. That little leafy one. Okay, so I'm just going to go over the surface with the heat gun again. This is dry now, and I'm just laying down the masks so that I can spray the currant, or the cranberry, onto the surface. And I want to add the flour this time. Make sure my little masks are all lined up here. Okay, so this time I'm going to come from this direction. And I'm spraying pretty high off the paper, and it looks like I'm bleeding. Okay, so this time we'll see how the masks did. That one is still the one that stayed truest to its shape there. Okay, so instead of blotting, I'm going to dry again. Okay, and I do want to mention, I mentioned this in my last video about alcohol ink sprays. If you decide to make up one of these of your own, please be careful, because Ranger issued some type of warning about alcohol mists being a fire hazard, and I personally have not had that issue, but I don't want to recommend using an alcohol mist. I don't want it to start a fire in your house, So, and if you're young enough that you still are living at home with your parents, please do not attempt this without their supervision. Okay, so I'm just going to clean up a little bit of the sheet here, and so we have a nice watercolory effect here, and what I'm going to do now is go in with a Distress stain. This is the only one that I have. I'm on a spending freeze. I actually wrapped up 1 month of a spending freeze yesterday, so I'm not buying any new craft products for 1 more month. And that's until April 11th. And so in this white area, I'm going to go in with the Wild Honey and just lay down some color. And this is also going to be a background color because I'm going to be doing some stalks of grass down here, and so again, this color doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't, I mean, just getting it onto the canvas is fine because there's going to be some things going over it. And I want to leave that really pretty misty look right here at the edges. I think that looks really neat to just leave that like it is. Okay, we'll be back with it. So what I'm going to do now is use another baby wipe. This is a fresh one, and I'm just going to go in. Please ignore my dirty craft sheet that's covered in gesso. And I'm just going to take away a little bit of the color here so that the shapes are a little more defined. Okay, and I especially want the stalk of this flower to show, because once I start adding some of the three-dimensional elements, I want to be sure that it looks like there is a stalk reaching up to that flower, and you'll see why a little later. I'm just going to go in and kind of rub this around and get those little bubbles to pop out. And it still has this neat watery effect, but as you can see, it's pretty easy to go in and take away a little bit of that color and just define the shapes a little better. And this area is going to have a paper flower attached to it, so I'm going to empty out the color there, and then I'm going to try to define this little flourish over here a little better. And I like the imperfectness of this. It just, you know, it still looks like a flourish, but it just looks watery and artsy to me. It doesn't look perfect, which is perfectly fine. And a little bit more over here. Okay, so I'm putting down my watercolor paper now, and one idea that you might like to try is, I've just set aside the canvas, and I'll just show it to you quickly again. For the sake of time and just the filming, I'm using this cardboard as is. What you could do though is lay down the gesso and dry it thoroughly. Make sure it's completely dry, either with a heat gun or just let it dry naturally. And then place it in a large book with a bunch of heavy books on top of it and really get a flat surface to work on, because your masks will work better that way. And you won't get so much of the intermingling of the color there. If you like it this way, then go for it. But if I were to do this project again, I would flatten the cardboard before I started misting over the masks. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is make some flowers. And I'm using the Faber-Castell Gelatos. It's one of my favorite mediums to work with. And I'm just rolling them out onto the paper here. This is from the metallic set. So I've got metallic grape, this is metallic blueberry, and then this one is metallic melon. And this is to get some of my flowers made. Okay, and just so this one doesn't feel left out, I'm going to use this one too. Metallic mint is this one. Okay, and then you can just use, like I said before, a baby wipe will work fine with the gelatos. I'm just going to use a paintbrush because I have one handy that's already wet. And I'm just going to blend in the colors. I'm not too worried about accuracy or anything like, it looking perfect, because when you make paper flowers this way, some of the paper isn't even going to show, so it certainly doesn't have to look exact. Just splash around that color as much as you want, because it's going to end up being rolled. And if you've seen any flower tutorials on YouTube, you'll see what I mean. There's tons of them out there. I'm just going fast here for the sake of the video and getting as much color spread out as I can. Okay. And some of the little gel chunkies got over there, so I'm just going to blend them right in with that blue, and that's fine. Okay, I'm going to put my brush back in the water, and this part is important. You do want to color the back side of the flowers, because some of that paper is going to show up. So I'm just going to use my purple brown and get some color on the back. Some of the white peeking through, I'm not too worried about. I'm just going to let that drip. Some cool effects on there. I'm going to use my dirty baby wipe to get some of this excess ink up and hit this with the heat gun. The gelatos will dry pretty quickly on their own, and they'll dry a lot just from you running the heat gun on the opposite side. Okay, so I'll pick up some of these scissors. I got a whole tub of them. They're decorative scissors a while back at Michael's. I think it was before Christmas, and it was $5 for a pack of 12, and they all have different edges. Great deal. And I really haven't used them all that much, so I'm glad I'm using them for this project. And I'm just going to cut these into circles. Now, if you want larger flowers, you would make a huge circle. To get a really large flower, you need to make, I would take like half of this sheet and make a circle. That's to get an extra large flower. So as you can see, because the paper is still a little bit wet, it sort of distressed the edges. And I'm just going to go in and cut a spiral pattern. And this isn't really a tutorial on making paper flowers. There are tons of them online though, and so if you haven't made them before, please just search for one on YouTube. There's just all kinds of them out there that use this exact same method. Okay, and I'm just going to rip that. And I have my glue gun off to the side here. I don't know if you can see if it's in frame. I'm just heating that up because, again, in the interest of time, it's the easiest, fastest way for me to glue these flowers. Okay, so again with the spiral pattern. And as you can see, the flower is colored on the back. So okay, and I'm just going to repeat this exact same process of cutting a spiral for the rest of the four flowers. I have these spirals cut out and plenty of little scrappies left, and some of this is good paper, and some of it is still obviously colored, and so I'm going to stash that in my scraps bin because it can definitely be used for other projects. And again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to show you one flower that I'm rolling. Okay, this is one of the mint ones. And what I usually do, I've seen people use toothpicks too, is I just wrap it around a pair of pliers. If you have jewelry pliers or really any kind of needle nose or round nose pliers would work for this. But again, like I said, you could use a toothpick. And then you have a little pad left here. You're just going to dot it with the glue gun and roll that flower right on there. Hold it for a sec. Be careful not to burn yourself. Hot glue will be pretty hot. Luckily this paper is really thick, so the heat is not coming through it too much. Okay, and while that's setting, I'm just going to kind of pull out some of these petals. Okay, and you can see your little flower, and what I like to do is just do one final dab in the middle and really get the glue gun in there, and that way the flower is not going to pop up on you. Okay, so there's one. I'm going to finish up the rest of them and be right back. Okay, so now I have a nice little handful of shabby chic little flowers, and they have a little bit of metallic on them from the gelatos. And they're all sort of in the same color family, but they're each a little bit different. You'll never get two that look exactly the same. And I'm going to start arranging these onto the canvas. So like here, I'm just going to give a nice round blob of hot glue, and remember that this is going to be in a shadow box, and so you can have things that are coming up off of the page. You just want to make sure to adhere them well. I'll put another flower down here, and I'm just going to go around the flower and really make sure that it's good and sealed with the glue. Hold that in place for a little bit. And because hot glue dries so fast, that's one of the reasons I love using it, especially in a video. is you get pretty instant results. Okay, so another little circle of glue there. And you'll get these little stringies if you work with the hot glue, and I just try to like wind the gun back up so that they kind of wind into a little bunch of glue, and then you can just remove it from the paper. Okay. So I like how this area is a little darker than other parts of the canvas, and so I want to put a flower there, but I want to definitely put it down strategically so that I'm not covering up that darker cranberry color right there, because I think that's really pretty. Okay. And the flowers are wanting to wobble a little bit. As soon as that glue dries, it'll be fine. You just, like I said, you want to make sure to put plenty down so that the flower doesn't have anywhere to go. And I'm just going to hold that in place until it dries a little bit more. Okay. And then I have this one last little bloom. And again, because the canvas is warped and it hasn't the flower lean that way. With the grass, I'm going to use this 12 by 12 sheet of scrapbook specialty paper. I got this at Michael's. It is sort of a turquoise mint green color, and I'm going to be cutting it up with the same set of scissors. And let me find the pair that I'm looking for here. Okay, so these magenta scissors have this little pattern on them, if you can see that. And to get my stalks of grass, I'm just going to randomly start cutting. Just pretty long strips. And they can be different lengths, like natural grass is. So I'll do some shorter little ones, some longer ones. So to adhere the grass, I am going to use Mod Podge. This is the gloss, and it actually wouldn't matter if you use the matte version because it's just going to mainly be going onto the back of the grass, and so you won't really be seeing the Mod Podge. I'm just going to lightly cover the grass, and again, to keep with that sort of randomness, I'm going to layer some of the grass over other pieces. Make sure to get plenty on your fingers while you're working. there's just no point if your fingers are not totally messy at the end of the project. I'm just going to use my fingers to kind of adhere these down. Another reason that the spinning freeze has been great is that I'm using up all these things that were just sitting in drawers, like this foil paper. I remember when I bought it, I had all kinds of ideas for it, and then it just got stowed away in a drawer. You know, I didn't think about it, and then now that I'm not spending money, I'm going into those drawers and looking for stuff and finding that I have lots to work with, so it's pretty awesome. And it's totally changing the way I'm looking at spending habits. Definitely want